So yeah, let's get started. Thank you all again for coming and spending part of your Wednesday evening with us at NAPO. My name is Jennifer Forrester, and I'm the treasurer of Indigenous Nations Poets, or NAPO. And a little bit about NAPO. We were founded in 2020 by Dr. Kimberly Blazer, who still is our amazing leader and heroine. She's not here tonight because she's in Italy right now. So at a writing retreat. So it's about 4 a.m. So we told her, you should be sleeping. It's okay. But she sends her best regards. So NAPO is a national Indigenous poetry community committed to mentoring emerging writers, nurturing the growth of Indigenous poetic practices, and raising the visibility of all Native writers, past, present, and future. We've had several years already of operations. We've had 2 retreats and looking forward to a third one this spring or summer. We're still waiting to decide on the date. Retreats for emerging writers. And if you follow our social media, we'll definitely post about when we're starting to accept applications for people to attend that retreat and become fellows. And then once you're a fellow with NAPO, you're invited to come a second time to another retreat. And we also just try to keep building a community among the fellows. And one of the things we're doing next week is a fellow reading. So social media will have information on that. And I think it's about this time next week, I believe, featuring a wonderful array of some NAPO fellows reading some of their work. And these workshops, we're trying to do more and more of them. We've had several in the last year, and we're just starting to build them up as a resource that we can offer to the poetry community and support Indigenous poetics. So tonight we're having a workshop by Edgar Silex. Thank you, Edgar, for joining us and teaching us this evening. Edgar is a board member of NAPO. Edgar is the author of 2 poetry collections from Northwestern University Press and a chapbook from New Sins Press. His first poetry book, Through All The Displacements, was a nominee for the National Book Award, and his second book, Acts of Love, was a finalist for the National Poetry Series. He has received 11 nominations to the Pushcart Prize, fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts, the National Endowment for the Humanities, and grants from the Maryland State Arts Council and the Artist District Program in Baltimore. Mr. Silex's work has appeared in Rattle, Callaloo, Slipstream, Chiron Review, the Café Review, the Delaware Review, Gargoyle, and the New American Poets, among others. He lives in Baltimore, Maryland. Mr. Silex's Indigenous ancestors are Texcuexe, Nicarao, and Yaqui. He's in the process of learning Nahuatl, his Indigenous language. Indigenous language revitalization is a really important part of our work at NAPO right now. We think about Indigenous revitalization as an essential act of tribal sovereignty and also ecological connection and connection with one another. So thank you, Edgar, for also doing this really important work of revitalizing and learning Nahuatl. So before we get started, I wanted to ask everyone if you wouldn't mind putting in the chat where you're from, and if you have a tribal affiliation, what your tribal affiliation is. And that just helps us say hi to everyone here in a different way. So please go ahead and do that as a way of introducing yourself to us. Also, think of questions at the end of Edgar's class. He may be open to doing a Q&A if you have some questions. And other than that, Jody here. Oh, Jody, hi, I didn't introduce you. I'm so sorry. Jody here is our amazing operations manager at NAPO. And if you write indigenousnationspoets@gmail.com, you're going to reach Jody. And she's incredible support for everyone at NAPO. So thank you, Jody. And Jody will be putting some links in the chat for our website, our social media stuff, and also our fundraising page. So thank you all so much. And I think we got it all. All right. Are we ready to get started, Edgar?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. I'll mute myself.
Wali Yowali, good evening. Klaso Kamari to Nepo for hosting me, and to Annie for setting up all this workshop. Very grateful. My name's Edgar, and I write a lot of intense poems. That's just how I write. Just happens to be what I guess my style. So I write these intense poems, and so I teach. Usually when I teach only what I know. I try not to teach what I don't know, that I don't practice. So I practice this stuff, and this is how I write poems. And a lot of them are, they're very intense. But let me begin. Let me share my screen. And pardon me. All right. So this workshop will we'll talk about writing the intense poem. There are certain techniques that I use to write an intense poem and to sustain the intensity in the poem. The sort of level of stress has to go up and down in a poem like this, and you have to be able to release the tension in the poem and also to sort of keep it going. And so, it's difficult to write these poems. But they're powerful poems when you're done with them. I also want to talk a little bit about what it does to you when you write intense poems, the effect it has on readers and on your audience, and it does have some effect on your career. I'll give you a few point prompts, to do on your own. And there's one caveat that I need to address at the very end. So I'll try not to take a lot of your time, but let's see, I can't see my screen. Okay. Can you see, everybody see the whole screen there? Oops.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. So what's an intense poem? An intense poem grabs the reader immediately. It grabs them and it holds them through every single line in the poem, all the way to the last word. It holds that attention span that is necessary to hear an entire poem. So it grabs you. It has some power in that sense. It also, these poems tend to focus on a singular moment, a memory, one event, the denouement to something, a single word, a fraction of time, an idea, one final breath. I have probably the longest poem I've ever written is on the last breath of my grandfather. So there's a very long poem that I wrote all about that one final breath. But it's very intense. But it's one of the sort of tactics that I use in writing these. Usually, intense poems are experienced. They're not like poems that you sort of cerebrally hear and are affected by that. These are poems that you sort of, there are so many concrete details that you experience the poem. And this experience is what makes these poems resonant, as opposed to just hearing a poem and then walking away. It doesn't have a lot of intensity. It's a different kind of poem. It's still a beautiful poem in its own right, but the intense poem stays with you. If you walk away and you try it, it resonates, and people remember you. I did a reading a year and a half ago, And a man was there who had been to one of my very early readings way back in the 90s. And I remembered him and I said hi to him. And I said, "Do you remember me?" And he said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "Yeah, you're the guy who wrote that swastika poem." So he remembered something from 35 years ago. So that's how resonant these poems can become. These poems rely heavily on the senses, on facts, and on concrete images. And they're often about subject matter that is difficult to speak of or speak about or be open about. A trauma, whether it's violence, historical trauma, accidental trauma, cancer, all those sorts of things that happen. Those are the subject matter of intense poems. Abuse, whether it's drugs or domestic or sexual, depression, insanity, all these subjects that have a kind of emotive value to them that are difficult. But they can also be, they can equally be about awe, about surprise, about reverence, and about respect. Anything really that gives you goosebumps or that startles you or that you're still thinking about 2 days later, something that you're thinking about 2 days later is probably a good subject matter for an intense poem. So most of these poems, they don't displace you. They don't make you uncomfortable. They don't change your sort of value system or anything like that. They don't attempt to do that. What they simply do is they turn off your audible radars. They turn off your ability to hear and to experience the poem. That's why these are intense, because you're experiencing them and it's happening. Often, again, they use a subjective point of view, and so you become part of the actual reading. With these poems, the most important thing, and I cannot stress this enough, is that the first word or the first line of a poem must establish urgency. It must grab the reader's attention. It must make that reader want to read the next line. That's what you're doing. That first line is so important for a lot of reasons. One is that first line is the reason why you're writing this poem. It's to challenge yourself. When you write that first line, that line must challenge you. It has to challenge you to write deeper, more effectively, to convey what you're trying to say, and to not be afraid to use language which you might find to be too explicit or too how should I say it, intense, in the sense that it will evoke emotions in the readers that you may feel uncomfortable doing. But that's what these poems do. There are approaches to establishing this kind of urgency. The first time when one of the approaches you can use is the subject matter. The subject matter of a poem often perks people's attention. So if you're talking about, a suicide or alcoholism or some kind of violence, or even just, you're talking about the sun rising. The subject matter has to have something in it that grabs the reader and holds them. There are some words that are very loaded, and nouns that are loaded. For example, the noun Trayvon Martin, the name. If you use that term, that's a term that's loaded, and it's a very heavy sort of term, and so you have to consider that as part of what's going on with your subject matter. Another tactic you can use, approach to writing an intense poem, is to begin with a testimonial. You said such and such a thing, and I'll give you examples in a minute on these ways of approaching the idea of the poem. You can also begin with a concrete image. Maybe somebody does something strange and you write that down. You can also make an invocation to silence. That sets the mood. Sometimes when you start a poem, for example, I have a poem that starts your silence. And usually when I start reading that poem and I say your silence, almost everybody quiets down. They quiet, they listen, because it sort of forces you, when somebody says silence in a poem, almost everybody just intuitively does it. It has that effect. Finally, there's also a call to curiosity. You can establish the urgency to keep the exigency to keep reading by appealing to somebody's curiosity. Like the first line may be a way in which somebody's eavesdropping, so that the idea of eavesdropping, again, it pricks your radars up and you go, oh, what are they going to say? What's the next line going to say? That kind of thing. So you've got your reader wanting to read the next line. Oh, these are my crude pictures, but let me go back here. So once you figure out what you want your intense poem to be about, you have essentially your idea. Now you have to write a line. And the first line is really the most difficult portion of this because, like I said, it has to be honest. It has to have emotional force. It has to put you in a position to get out of that line. In other words, you've written a line that you don't normally write, or a line that says something that's provocative or polemic. It has a polemic in it of some sort. And you're trying to sort of work your way out of that with these poems. You're trying to challenge yourself to write and to explain what it is, what that first line is all about. And a good way, I keep doing that, sorry. A good way, sorry, there we go. A good way to do this is, once you have your poem, then you want to write a line that's extremely challenging for you so that you can work your way out of it. Now, when I write a poem, I like to think of poems as trees. Now, I know that's reductive, but I'd like to think of poems like every poet is planting their own grove. When you plant a tree, when you plant a poem, you want that poem to be the biggest poem in the forest, because you want that poem to be like a mother poem that feeds other trees. You want that poem to be the biggest tree around, and you want it to keep feeding other poets, other poems, other trees that are coming up. That's the kind of reach that you want with these intense poems. You want to write the biggest damn tree poem you can. Now, the idea is the trunk of your poem, is your idea, your central theme. That's the subject matter of your poem. Now, with each line that you write, each line becomes, if you will, a branch. Every time you add a line, you're adding a new branch, right, to this poem. And if you look at trees, if you look at the way trees are, trees have this gravity, weight, and every single branch tends to first go out of the trunk, it curves down because of its weight, and then it lifts itself up. This is very, very much what you do when you write these poems. You want to have the weight of words in each line balanced so that the intensity is lifted slowly at the end of each line. You want to say something that's heavy emotionally or something like that, but at the end of the line, you want it to lift up, just like the branch of a tree. And then I'll show you these crude things, my drawings, I'm sorry. There are essentially two ways of writing these poems. One is this way here, which is if you look at trees, if you study trees, you find that some trees have the branches, the nodes to each branch on the same level of the trunk. Each node will have one branch going this way and one branch going that way. Whereas other trees, if you look at this one, every line moves the poem forward. Every line is going to move the poem up. Every line, because these trees have nodes that go on a spiral. The tree has a spiral as it grows, and the branches come out in spirals. So when you look at the silhouette, you see that every single line is not at the same point in the idea or in the trunk of the tree. Okay, so starting the intense poem. I think I already covered this. You want to write a line that tenses you up, that makes you uncomfortable. You don't want to write a line that's easy. You want to write a line that's hard, that you want to get out of, something that's difficult for you to talk about, something that you experienced that's difficult, that's bothering you. That's how, in a sense, I heal myself often from experiences. I had an experience, road rage experience a few months ago, and it was really intense for just, about 2 minutes at the red light. But I could not stop thinking about it, and I've written several poems about it because it's a subject matter for an intense poem. Now, let me ask, if you read this line here from Marianne Moore's famous poem, "Poetry, I too dislike it. There are things that are important beyond all this fiddle." Now, imagine yourself as a poet. Let's say Marianne Moore was fairly famous by this time. Imagine yourself as a poet writing this line. "Poetry, I too dislike it." That's not an easy line to walk out of, to back. You have to write what it is you're trying to say now. You've written yourself into a corner and you need to write yourself out of it. And that's exactly what this line does. "Poetry, I too dislike it." Obviously, she challenged herself to write a great poem. Now, this is not necessarily an intense poem, but it's the way these poems start, with these challenges. Now, the one way to start an intense poem is to do a declarative leap. And that is to simply just declare something, just jump off the poetry ledge and make some broad statement that you think is factual and state it as if it is fact. Right here is, for example, Elizabeth Bishop's poem, "The Art of Losing Isn't Hard to Master," or "First Memory" by Louise Gluck. "Long ago, I was wounded. I lived. I release you, my beautiful and terrible fear. I give you back joy, heart." All these lines, think about it. If these were your lines, how would these lines challenge you? If you don't mind me asking, if somebody wants to answer. Let's say if you started a poem that says, the art of losing is an art to master, how are you being challenged in this poem, with this line?
I feel I have to convince the reader that I'm right. I have to stand up for what I just said.
And yes, because essentially you're talking about losing. You know, this isn't something that's fun to write about. Okay, now you have to talk about what it means to lose, but you've challenged yourself to write about what it means to lose, and to lose in a way that's uplifting, that isn't negative in general, as most of us feel when we hear the word lose. You know, um, so it's a challenge. Elizabeth Bishop challenged herself to write a difficult poem with the first line. The same thing with Long Ago I Was Wounded, or I Release You, My Beautiful, Terrible Fear. I don't know if any of you know any of these poems, but I do have them here. Let's see if I can find them. Screen working. Okay. So let me ask you this. What word in let's say in Joy Harjo's line, I release you, my beautiful and terrible fear. What is the most important word on that line?
Fear.
Why?
Because it is the enemy. Yeah, that's the first thing that came to my mind. It
Okay.
is, yeah, and something you wish to release. You're grappling with it, you're fighting with it. You're in constant war-ish with it.
Mm-hmm. And I completely agree. It's fear in this case, but it's not necessarily the most important point about a word. It's the part. It's the one thing that's drawing you, but the thing that's different here, I believe, is the word beautiful, uh, because it contrasts with terrible. And this little phrase here is doing something that's convergent and divergent thinking simultaneously. It's doing it all at once. And but the poem is about fear. But the thing that this poem does is it's saying, I release you. I release you. So there's this hope, this divergent idea that begins the poem. That the divergent, by that I mean, when you're thinking divergently, you're thinking that there are more possibilities to what it is you're thinking about. There are more answers. There are ways to look at things differently. There are ways to diverge from the reality that you're having to write about. Fear. There are ways to think about fear that will release you, that will help you, that will make you see fear differently. And so this is what's happening in this poem. Now, I know, for a fact that when you write these poems that you're not thinking, that Joy wasn't thinking, well, I'm going to start with a divergent thought here. She didn't think that. She just wrote it. It comes intuitively. So like I said, many of these things that I'm telling you are somewhat intuitive, but if you practice them, especially in intense poems, you get great results. You get great poems. You get things that people will not forget your poetry. Now, the important thing about intense poems is that they use a lot of intense language. word choices that are difficult. You know, massacre and disaster and things of that nature. If you, let me see if I can. Okay, if you look at Elizabeth Bishop's poem, the art of losing isn't hard to master. So many things seem filled with the intent to be lost, that their loss is no disaster. And this keeps repeating, fluster, disaster again, you lose your keys badly, you lose further and further. You know, these words intensify this point. They make it feel as if there's more feeling it going, more things happening here than meets the eye. And so you're reading it because it's sort of compelling you to want to understand why it's okay to lose and how she's explaining that. If you look at, here's another poem that's very intense. My Brother at 3 a.m. I don't know if you know this poem by Natalie Diaz. This is a pantoum, and I'll read it very quickly for you. He sat cross-legged weeping on the steps when Mom unlocked and opened the front door. Oh God, he said, oh God, he wants to kill me, Mom. When Mom unlocked and opened the front door at 3 a.m., she was in her nightgown. Dad was asleep. He wants to kill her, he told her, looking over his shoulder. 3 a.m. in her nightgown. Dad asleep. What's going on? She asked. Who wants to kill you? He looked over his shoulder. The devil does. Look at him. Over there, she added. What are you on? Who wants to kill you? The sky wasn't black or blue, but the green of dying night. The devil, look at him. Over there, he pointed to the corner house. The sky wasn't black or blue, but the dying green of night. Stars had closed their eyes or sheathed their knives. My brother pointed to the corner house. His lips flickered with sores. Stars had closed their eyes or sheathed their knives. Oh God, I can see the devil, he said. Oh God, look. Mom winced at the sores on his lips. It's sticking out from behind the house. Oh God, see the tail, he said. Look at the goddamn tail. He sat cross-legged, weeping on the front steps. Mom finally saw it, a hellish vision. My brother, oh God, she said. Now, again, subject matter. Here you have insanity. Here you have visions, things that are unsettling that she's addressing. Here's one more intense poem here. Another famous intense poem, My Papa's Waltz. Again, the subject matter, whiskey, okay? The drunk father. The whiskey on your breath could make a small boy dizzy, but I hung on like death. Such waltzing was not easy. Again, very intense. I hung on like death, okay? This is, obviously he's going to get beat up and all sorts of things in this poem. Let me go back to the weight of words. So words have all these things that come with them, the etymology, the history of the word, for example, the history of the word swastika, definitions, the connotations, the euphemisms, context, the way you juxtapose poems in a line, words in a line, the context, all these things give each word what it appears to be like EMC squared, relativity. Okay, it has a lot of weight. And when you put an intense word in a line, it will actually bend that line either towards, if you will, towards more tension, or it will lift it up towards hope. So these things these lines, you have to be very careful about how much language is in each line, how much tension you have in each line, how far you want to go. Intense poems continually raise and lower the level of tension, sustaining the urgency to continue reading through the use of oppositions. You can use contradictions. You can use use of opposites. You can shift between abstract and concrete language. You can shift between images. You can shift between convergent concrete images and divergent figurative language. And I'll show you that in a minute, how we do that. So I showed you these poems. These intense poems also lend themselves very much to forms, especially to villanelles and to pantoums. You find these poems are very good for that because of the power of the repetition that keeps you don't have to rewrite the intensity of the line. You can just rephrase it differently. And so these forms help you with sustaining the tension in the poem. So here are some first examples from some of my poems that I use. I don't ever use my work when I teach. It's just one of those things I have that I don't like doing. But here I'm just going to show you some first lines. So this line, the first line, using a subject matter, which is one of the tactics. So the subject matter here, obviously, suicide. And there's the sort of the call to curiosity, because it's the last conversation. And when you say that, sometimes people say, "Oh, well, I want to hear what he said." I want to hear what that last, what that voice said at the very end. Another, oops, sorry. Oh man, this is terrible. I can't seem to keep it. Okay, here we go. So another poem that I have is Swastika. Now, that poem begins with the title Swastika. And that is a loaded, intense word. It's got all kinds of histories, everything that you can think of is thrown into that word. That poem was generated when I was coming home one day and I saw a swastika. There was all these cop cars, and I saw a swastika painted on the temple of this Jewish temple I was on the metro station, and it was in the actual subway car, and I was looking out the window, and then I saw that in there, and I was really affected by that. And I came home, and it was all over the news, and I researched everything I could about swastikas, and then I wrote this poem. And I can tell you, when I read this poem, it is very, very intense. And I have to almost sometimes say to people when I read it that you are about to hear something that's going to be difficult for you to listen to. And so, because the word begins with swastika, the title is Swastika, I lower the tension by not talking at all about swastikas in the first four lines. I don't want to even have anything to do with it. I move away from it. There's another poem, a testimonial. I use a testimonial in another poem for Chris, to you who said your father through you. Okay, I went to a small community little community, and this little boy, 10-year-old boy, told me his story, who had been thrown out of a window by his dad. And he had scars that they had cut his, done open heart surgery on him. And so this poem comes out of that. It's very intense again. Acts of Love, poem from Acts of Love, the title poem of my second book. You are lying on the carpet of your bedroom dead. This is a concrete image. I start with that. So I have to work myself out of these lines. Okay, this is why I challenge myself. Call to curiosity and everything breathes. Consider the breath of a stone. This is about a poem where, you know, I talk about how everything breathes, everything. I was listening to this elder talk about how everything is alive, and how everything that vibrates breathes, is breathing. The vibration itself, he said, is the breath of life. So that's where this poem sort of starts from. And then finally, Mother threw me out a two-story window. This is the first line of another poem. It's a true story, but anyways, it's a very intense poem also. Now, when you write these poems, I want to sort of give you this image again, because this is this is what I will give you a prompt on. So when you write this poem, this is your central idea. You're going to write these lines, and this is called the mirror approach. And so you have this line here is going to be convergent thinking, which is all the lines are concrete images. You're going to focus on your theme. Every one of these lines on this side of your poem is going to have something of this effect, of this nature. It uses the senses, it uses facts, etc. It's real, it's concrete. It uses declarative leaps. Joy Harjo uses declarative leaps all the time. All the time. I love that. That's where I learned that. How to make a declarative leap, which is just to say something. You know, this is why the ants live the way they live, because they have helped clean the earth. Or, you know, so she just declares it. This is what makes something holy. This is what makes something, this is how the wind behaves. She just says it, declares it, that's it. That's all there is to it. Whether it's fact or not is not important. It's a leap, it's a declarative leap. It helps you move your poem away from tension when you do these declarative leaps. And then on the divergent side of your poem, you're going to have all the lines are going to be figurative in nature. They're going to be metaphors. Nothing's going to be concrete. You're going to use whatever tropes you can, similes, metaphors, whatever you want to do. You're going to use comparisons. You're going to contrast. You're going to contradict. You're going to do oppositions. But it's going to mirror this line here that you've written, which is a concrete image. This line, the next line that you write, is always going to be a figurative in nature. Okay, so let me go one more. So after you write your first line on a concrete using this mirror approach, is your first line a concrete image? Yes. And your next line should be a figurative image mirroring what the first line is doing. So you want to restate in a figurative way what your first line was. So you want to repeat it, and you're going to keep doing this in every line. You're going to write a concrete line, then you're going to write a figurative line that explains the concrete line or gives you hope. The second line is always about trying to find hope. The first line is about trying to understand the issue. Why did somebody have to do what they did in this road rage incident? I'm going to describe what he did over and over, every little detail that he did. The second line, I'm going to try to figure out why he's doing what he's doing. Every second line, when I describe a detail that he did, the next line, I'm going to try to find some hope in the horrible things that that person did. And so you just continue this way and you're doing this. You don't want to get into too much figurative or conceptual language or ideas. These poems are about concrete images and things of that nature. That's what holds the attention of the reader. So I'll give you some poetry prompts. Write a first line that uses a noun or a phrase, which is an allusion, something like an allusion to something. A wounded knee, for example, is an allusion. Pahasapa, if you know what that is. The word Holocaust is an allusion. Missing or murdered Indigenous women is an allusion to a whole history of things. The treaties, the word Anthropocene is also loaded today. If you start with the word Anthropocene, you want to use this mirror approach when you write this first line. The other, if you want to try a different one, a different prompt, these are great for writing self-portrait poems. Okay, I write a self-portrait poem every birthday that I have, and I use this tactic, which is to write something about myself that's very honest and difficult to face. And then the next line, I write something that allows me to see that differently about myself. And then I do it again, something else that I need to examine, something else, a way to lift myself out of that. So you write a self-portrait line, maybe 12 lines at the most about yourself. That would be a prompt. And use declarative leaps or use it in a pantoum if you want to do that. Okay, so finally, to sort of close here, intense poems can be easy to publish. People love them to publish them by themselves. However, there is a caveat, and that is that if you put too many of these poems in a book, it's much, much harder to find somebody to publish it. Okay, no, it's for some reason, publishers do not like books filled with a ton of intense poems. It's too much. In fact, some of the best advice I ever got from my professor was that I needed to separate the intense poems in my manuscripts and put poems that were not as difficult to read in between, so that there would be some pause, some sort of way for the reader to have a break from all the intensity. And so they're great for that, but they're also they can have consequences in your career as far as publishing. Intense poems are great for readings. This is the place you want to read as many intense poems as you want. People love them. They will hear every single one. They will stay through it. They'll hear them. I've had these things that happen to me when I go to readings. People will clap after every single poem. I don't know, what it is that makes them clap, but I read a poem and then they'll all sit there for a few seconds in silence and clap, then start clapping. Or they'll, like I said, they'll literally come to me after the reading and they'll say, "Man, your poems are intense. Those are intense poems." And they come up to me and they say that. I've heard it many, many, many times. And so people will remember you. I am where I am right now in my poetry career because of the poems that I write. I don't promote myself. I don't publish a lot. I don't have a poetry career. In other words, I'm not teaching. I don't write, write so that I can have a teaching career or anything like that. I just write poems because I like writing poems and figuring things out about myself through poetry. So, so for me, it's okay. I don't mind writing intense poems. I write lots of them. I read them, and I get great responses from people. And basically, that's it. Thank you very much. If you want to ask questions, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
Yeah, if people want to put questions in the chat, feel free, or you can also just ask them. Thank you so much, Edgar. That is fascinating. I'll just start off by saying I'm so amazed. I mean, I've never thought of looking at this approach that you have with, choosing, it was so clearly thought of this, beginning a poem either with the subject matter, a testimonial, concrete image, mood, or a call to curiosity. And I thought your examples were really helpful. And also the idea of just beginning with a line that's really difficult and writing it down seems terrifying to me. But that's really the leap that you're talking about. So you've just shown me a whole new way to think about working on a poem. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm honored. Yeah. It's fun to do it, to challenge yourself like that. I can tell you, you won't always succeed. I, like everyone, I write a lot of bad poems,
No. Edgar, let me ask you if you have, like in a book, you separate the intense poems so they're not all clumped together. Do you do the same thing in a reading?
Sometimes I do that. I gauge the sort of audience that I have. Sometimes there's a lot of seniors, and so I don't do as many intense poems when there's a lot of seniors in the audience, simply because that's not sort of the thing they like to listen to. At least that's my experience. So, but most of the time, yeah, I don't edit any of that. I just, I pick whatever. My best poems are intense, so I read the best.
Yeah. I know that Lucy Tapahanso always says she begins with a song, and then at the end of a reading, she will end with a prayer that will kind of offset some of the, like more intense poems, like her poem about the long walk, for example.
Yeah. And I had experiences like I did a lot of readings with Lucille Clifton, and she liked to come in at the beginning and read a few poems and then let me read because I was very intense.
Wow.
And then she could come in at the end and make everybody laugh and read some more of her poems. So that's how we had this little shtick that we would do, and it's a lot of fun.
I was going to say, oh,
go ahead. I was going to ask
I was just
questions, so thank you.
Yeah, I just really appreciated the what you were talking about as being the mother tree, like creating poems as the mother tree, and they feed all the other ones coming up. That was really lovely. So miigwech, thank you for that and everything. These are really great prompts and wisdoms for poetry. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm gonna try and share just one of these poems here so you can see. I wanted to use it as an example earlier, but let's see if I can find it. Here's the poem Swastika. And as you can see, when I wrote this poem, this first 4 lines, I played with the sound. I didn't really want to start with the word swastika because it's so loaded. And it sets people back immediately. So I started with the sounds, the swashing, spluttered drops, falling primal fluid, swastika, the sharp stances, fencing swashbucklers, that sort of whole SW sound that comes, swagger, femininity, swift, enticement. And then I sort of start getting into it. And these poems, it sort of venerates the swastika at first, which upsets a lot of people. But, the swastika was once the halo of the European gods. There are different uses of the swastika. There's a right and a left-hand swastika, and different cultures use them for different things. But in Europe, it was always the halo of God. And so, these things were known to, for example, the Nazis, and they used these symbols intentionally to sort of, try to create this Teutonic, if you will, ideal of human beings, or whatever the hell they were trying to do. But in any ways, and so having researched that, I wrote all these things in here, and it makes people very uncomfortable when I read it. And sometimes I have to say something, like, please, don't walk away from the poem because it's making me uncomfortable. It does turn around at the end. At the end, I come back, I play with the sound again, and I make the sound of Nazis marching. I like the way it comes from my mouth, indifferently sweeping the air before smacking it. Swastika. I try not to, but I cannot help visualizing black boots marching synchronously. First, there is a gentle swan-like lift, then swat, swan-like swat, swan-like swat. Perhaps nothing symbolizes dynamic movement like a swastika, swirling, whirling. So you see, I'm playing with the sounds, but I'm also using the images as a sort of way to address the sort of Nazification of this poem. And then it ends essentially with an uplifting, there's no way to venerate, if you will, this particular symbol anymore. This is gone. It belongs to evil now. That's it. That's all there is to it. But it was once a great symbol. So that's essentially the poem. But it's when you start with the word swastika, it's always going to be intense. But you can't be afraid. You can't be. Fearlessness is one of these things about these poems.
That's something I appreciate so much, is the courage that you're encouraging us towards, to say the things. I really appreciate what you said about putting ourselves in a corner so we can write ourselves out of it. That's such an incredible challenge. Thank you.
Lasso Kamadi, and I've kept you 2 minutes over the line here, and I really appreciate all of you who came to listen to me, and I'm very grateful and I'm very honored.
Is there a way that you might be able to share your PowerPoint, perhaps?
Yes. Can I stick it in?
I don't know if you can put it in the chat. You could also send it to me.
Okay, I'll send
it. Actually, I'll put my email in the chat, and if anyone wants to see it, just send me an email. I'll put my email in the chat, and I will send it to you. Does that sound good? There we go. Some people might want to. I do too. It's a great. That tree image is really helpful. It's so fascinating about that, the counterpoint between the figurative and the concrete, and doing one after another and sandwiching it. That's really a great idea. All right. So thank you all for this, and thank you, Edgar, for this really mind-opening talk. Jody put another note in the chat here that if you're not on our email list, you can go to our website and sign up. So we are sending out, regular newsletters and updates so you can keep in touch with us, and also follow us on social media and support us. We have a Kindful page for fundraising, and you can reach it through that link that Jody included or directly with our website. And you'll be able to watch this class again in about a week or so when it's posted. So thank you all so much. Thank you, Edgar. That was excellent. I'm inspired to write. I was taking notes and I have some ideas already. So
Thank you.
Mado.
Very good. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for being here, everyone.
Nice.
See you next time. Next Wednesday will be a NA Poe reading of Fellows.